Alright, this is the first video that we're going to go over the UI stuff required for the RPG game. Remember that there are going to be like extra UI stuff that you can have that you can add. But for now, like we're going to go over the basics. So first of all, we're going to create a folder inside of our content for UI. So I'm going to create a new folder called UI for our user interface. And I'm going to go into it and I'm going to create a folder in here for textures and a folder for fonts, and a folder for our widgets. And it's just going to help us with organization, especially as we get a lot of different stuff in here. So first of all, the textures are like the 2D images that we want to use as part of our UI. So we can have sprites that we can use, we can have background images, we can have button images, like so many different things. So first of all, a couple things that I want to show you. There is in the modules and in the menus page, menus tutorials, which is I am gonna go over menus in this one very quickly, but there's also some tutorials here that go over menus as well. But the buttons template here is a Canva template that just has a bunch of like different like buttons that are just a very simple rounded button. So if you want to use these, you can. For all of your buttons, you do need to have a hover color and a like normal color, and those are going to be different. So I'm going to just create a button for this really quick, and I'm going to use like, I'm going to have kind of like a deserty theme. So I'm just going to change these colors to orange. Maybe it'll actually change my colors. I do like that. And then for pressed on the buttons, I am going to have it be like a darker orange. So, I mean for hover. So again, just make sure that you have two colors for your buttons, and I do want you to make sure you're stylizing your menus. It doesn't have to be like super complicated unless you're an artist and you want it to look really, really pretty, but I do want to make sure you're having some stylization. So again, you can definitely use this button, or you can go look for different button resources online, or you can go just draw your own. I mean, really simple, really easy, totally up to you. So I am going to download these to use. Oh, I didn't do transparent background. That's something you want to make sure you do from Canva, because otherwise it'll have like a white background. So even though you're doing PNG, make sure you do transparent background. Save that, and then download PNG transparent background, the second one. Okay, and again, you can find UI assets online. Just make sure you're being careful about royalties and like copyrights and things like that, like we've talked about with our other assets. The other thing is I want you to have a custom font, because the built-in font in Unreal is really boring and kind of lame. So have a custom font. If you go to like 1001 fonts, like this is one I love, but there's so many different ones too. But this one I love because it shows you actually what the licensing is. Like this is free for personal use, or it's free for commercial use. It will be green if it's free for commercial use. So if you're planning to publish it, like make sure you get one that's free for commercial use. But there's just like so many fonts, and it's so fun. Like you can just look up basically like so many different things and it will have fonts. So like this one is free for commercial use if you want to use it for commercial use. But like there's just so many fonts and it's really fun, and so I suggest getting one. It's really easy to upload a font. So like once you get a font, if you download one, and there are other websites too that you can download fonts from, but you can go into usually if it downloads like as a zip file like this, you're gonna want to extract it. And then there's going to be different file types for fonts. So like this one is a true type font, which is TTF. There's also OTF file. Both of those I know for sure work in Unreal. I think there might be other font files that work in Unreal too, but those ones for sure I know. I am going to import all of this stuff in now that I want to use here. So back here in my content drawer, I'm in my textures folder. I'm going to drag, actually I'm going to go to my fonts folder for a second, and I'm going to drag my font in here. So, or you could do the import button, but when you drag it in, it will ask you if you want to use the imported font face as its default, and you want to say yes, and it's going to create both of these. One of these is a font face, one of these is a font, and that's what Unreal needs to use for widgets is the font face. So you're going to want to have it create that. A couple other things that I'm going to drag into here. I'm going to drag in my buttons and some background images to use. Oh, and I put them all in the fonts folder, so I'm going to move them over to textures folder. And then just like kind of with our sprites, if you're using any 2D assets, you still want to do sprite actions, apply paper 2D texture settings, just to make sure that everything is really good and doesn't have like any backgrounds or issues with that. So now that I have stuff, so again, you can spend as much time as you want, like finding the assets that you want to use for your UI. But now that I have like the basic things here, I am going to go into widgets and I am going to right click and create a user interface widget blueprint down here way at the bottom. It's going to be a user widget and I'm going to call this WBP main menu. I'm going to double click to open this main menu, and this is what kind of widget interface looks like. This is the space where I can build. Again, there are other videos if you'd rather go through those, or I'm going to go through this one really quickly as well. Up here is the palette, and you're going to search for canvas panel and drag it down. So left click, drag it down into the hierarchy down here. So the canvas panel I like to have because it shows me my screen size. So it shows me kind of the space that I'm working with as I grab things from the palette and drag them down onto the widget. So another thing you can grab is a border and you can drag it down onto the canvas panel. A border is a way that you can just have like a solid background, so you can change like the coloring here and brush color, and you can also change if it's like opaque or not, and all of those kinds of things. So if you just want like a solid background, you can do something like this. You could also put an image on it, so I'm going to clear this brush color. If you go to the brush and appearance, there's an image section. So I can also put an image on here. So I can search for one of my background images that I brought into here and I could put that on here. And right now it looks good. It looks like it's filling the whole screen, but in order for it to actually like scale with the screen, we do need to change the anchor and we need to change the size box. So we're going to right click this border and say wrap with, and we're going to wrap with a scale box. And what that's going to do is it's going to help our image just like scale to the screen. So if I click on the border and I want it to just fill everything, I can do these fill options up here in the slot. So like this fill horizontally and fill vertically. And for the scale box for the anchor, so anchors are important. They tell our like image where to go when it's like when screen sizes are different and they close or open, and we want this to be the full screen. So we want anchored to the full screen. And that's just going to make it so it'll resize, and I'll kind of show you that when we can actually pull up our menu. So if you ever want to have something like resize with the full screen, a scale box is really useful. So another thing I'm going to add to here is I'm going to add text that is going to, and it's not going to be in my scale box, it's just going to be in my canvas panel. Whoops. I mean, we can put it in the border and in the scale box too. Maybe I'll do it that way just so you can like see it all resize. Yeah, but then we kind of, it's just like weird. Anyway, I'm going to change the, I don't know if this is going to like let me, the only thing is if I put it in my border, I don't think it's going to let me move it as easily, and I just want to do this quickly, so I'm not going to put it in the border. I'm just going to put it in the canvas panel. Okay, so over here on the right for my text, I want to go down to font. You can do the drop down if it's not open. And where it says Roboto, which is like the only one that is actually built into Unreal, I'm going to change this to Rock Boulder because that's the one I imported and it's cool and I like it. I'm going to change my font size like really, really big. And I'm going to have the name of the game up here. And I don't even know what this pseudo game is that I'm going to make with you guys. We'll just call it. I don't know. Better RPG. I'm just gonna do that because my brain isn't even thinking. Anyway, whatever the title is for your game, and you're gonna put it up here for the main menu, and you can like change the colors of the font. You can decide what looks good. Where is my font? There it is. So you can decide like how the letters are spaced, all of those things. I do want you to use a custom font and have fun with that. So put a title up there, and then the other things that we're going to need is buttons. We're going to need 2 buttons, one for play game, one for quit. I'm going to just make one so I can copy it and they can be exactly the same size. So I'm going to add a button, and I'm going to add a text on top of the button so it's nested under the button. So I'm going to drag out the button, and it should drag my text with it. And then I'm going to change the color, the image on my button. So over here where it says color and opacity, that's like the color. Oh, sorry, not that one. Button. All of my stuff collapsed, and now I'm trying to figure out where everything is. Oh yeah, so it's in style. So appearance and in style. And we have normal, and I'm going to add an image here. So I'm going to look for my button that I imported. So I'm going to do my orange. And we also want to hover, so that's why I said you want a different color. So for that one, I'm going to do my dark orange for hovered, and for pressed, I want to do the same thing. If you don't do a pressed one, then there is a slight moment when they press it and it goes off the hover color and it just kind of feels disorienting. So I usually do hovered and pressed as the same. And then for the text, I'm going to change my font to my new font, and then I'm going to increase the size of this text a bunch. I'm going to change this to say play. Maybe even make that like 150. Make this button bigger. And then I'm going to copy this button and paste it, so Control C, Control V, so that I have a button that's exactly the same size for my quit button. I could put these in a box together, by the way, to line them up exactly, but just for the purposes of quickly, there's horizontal boxes you can put them in. I'm not going to do that right now. Alright, so I play and I quit. I am going to modify colors of these. I don't know what colors I want to do. All right, so you can spend a lot of time here like designing your menu and making it look how you want, but those are just like some quick tips to like build it out. The other 2 things that we're going to do before we can get into the code for this menu is we're going to click on our first button over here, and at the top in the detail that says button_88, I'm going to change the name to actually be play button. That way I actually know what this button is when I use it in the code, and I'm going to check this button next to it that says is variable, because we're going to need it to be a variable to access it in the code. I'm going to do the same thing with the quit button. I'm going to change the name to quit button, and also check is variable. Now we're going to look at our anchor. So remember that for our border for our scale box, we did an anchor for the full thing, right? If you're doing an image, you want something like that. We also want our other anchors to match each other and to be kind of the relative location of where we want them. So for this text, I'm going to anchor it to the center top, and I'm going to actually anchor these buttons to either the center or the center top. I might do the center, yeah, center for these, and I want to anchor them the same so they're in relation to each other. So that's our anchors up there. And then the other thing is on these buttons, I want to make sure that this is drawing as an image. It's drawing as a rounded box right now, which is going to give it a weird border. So I want to draw these as images for both of those. All right, and then I'm going to compile and save that. So that's kind of the design of my menu. I'm going to do some code now. So we're going to go into the graph up here in the upper right. So here's our designer, and here's our graph for our widget. On construct is the event that triggers when we create this widget, and I want to handle my like changing input in these widgets. So like when I want to be in a UI mode versus a game mode. So in here, I'm going to search for get player controller. And I'm going to drag off of that and I'm going to set input mode as UI only. And that's going to make sure that I can't use any game controls in here and it's all just going to be UI. I'm going to flush the input in case there's any input pending. I'm also going to drag off of this get player controller and search for set show mouse cursor. So set show mouse cursor. And this is going to, and I'm going to tick this to true here. And this is going to show our mouse cursor when we're on this menu so that we can actually see it and know what we're clicking on. So this is our initial setup. I'm going to comment around here that says on construct set input mode to UI and show mouse cursor. So it's pretty self-explanatory, but like whatever comment helps you remember kind of what this code is doing. That's what we're going to do here when we construct it. The next thing I'm going to do is over here, I have a variable section in the My Blueprint. I'm going to click on my play button over here. Again, it's not going to show up here unless you selected is variable up here. So make sure you did that in the details on the designer. I'm going to click on my play button and then I'm just going to scroll down in the details over here on the left and I'm going to add an on clicked event. So I'm going to click this plus next to on clicked. And when we click the play button, I do want to switch the input modes back to our game mode. So I'm going to basically do this in reverse. So I'm going to get player controller and I'm going to drag off of this and I'm going to set input mode to game only. And I'm going to flush the input here. And then I'm going to drag off of this and do set show mouse cursor again, but this time I want it to be off. I want it to turn off in the game. Pull this down. And then I want to open my main level. So I'm going to search for open level by object reference. And I'm going to select the base map that we have and we created and we're hanging out on. So I'm going to add a comment around this. So when click play, change input to game only, remove mouse cursor, open main game level. So that's what's happening here. So when I click play, we're going to change the input mode to game only, remove the mouse cursor, and open the main game level. For quit on the left, I'm going to click on my quit button. I'm going to also add an on-clicked event. So I'm going to scroll down that plus next to on-clicked. And for this one, I'm going to search for quit game. So it's pretty simple. I'm going to attach those and do that. And search for on-click, quit game. Pretty easy. So that's our code right there for the main menu. Now let's pull up the main menu so we can test it out. So we're going to go into our content drawer and I'm going to go into content here and I'm going to create a maps folder. So I'm going to do a new folder for maps. I'm actually going to drag my base map into there and move it there. It is going to say that it's going to maybe cause a couple issues, so we'll look at that. One of the things is when we move stuff around, we want to make sure we're showing redirectors. So this is a filter that I showed you, I think last time, and we're going to click on this and update redirector references. So right click, update, anytime we have those redirectors showing so that we get that stuff updating correctly. In this folder, I'm going to create a new level and I am going to call this one main menu. I'm actually going to rename this base map. So I'm going to start naming things with a better naming convention. You don't have to, but I want to give a better example here. Redirector again from renaming. I do want to go into edit and project settings and make sure that in maps and modes here, yeah, it's going to change my editor startup map because I moved it. So if you move it, you're going to want to go change it back here. I'm going to change this one to base map. But anyway, we want to change our game default map to main menu anyway. So I have base map and main menu here. And save that. Okay, so then I'm going to go to my level main menu. I'm going to save everything, and this is just going to be a black level, and we just want it to stay black because it's just going to be a widget. We don't need to add like any sort of environment stuff. But what we are going to do is we're going to create a game mode specific to this level. So we're going to go into our content drawer, and I'm going to go back to content here, and where I have this game mode, I'm going to right click. I'm actually going to create a folder, and I'm going to call this game modes, because for the RPG we are going to have multiple game modes. So I'm going to drag my RPG game mode into there, and it's going to also need to probably have a redirector. So right click, update redirector references. And then when I go into game mode here, I'm going to right click and create a new blueprint class that is also a game mode base. And in this case, I am going to call this one main menu game mode. There you go, menu game mode. And that's going to be for my main menus. I'm going to rename this one to be better. I'm just going to call this like world game mode, because we are going to have a battle game mode too. And then I'm going to go into File, Edit, and go to Project Settings, and I am going to go to Maps and Modes and change this, because notice it got off of that default game mode. So I'm going to change this back to my world game mode. It should still keep everything else, like my controller and my pawn class and all of that here. But then on the main menu, I'm going to do an override. So this is the World Settings tab. If you don't have this open, you're going to go to Window and click on World Settings so that it opens here. And then at the top, you're going to see this Game Mode Override. I'm going to change that to Menu Game Mode. And in the drop down, it doesn't really matter all of this stuff except for the player controller. I do want this to be my player controller, so I don't want this to be the RPG controller, but we don't actually need the player here because it's just the menu. We don't need a lot of this stuff, so we can kind of just leave it like that. And then we're going to edit what's called the level blueprint, which is code specific to this level. So we're going to go to this little sideways graph here at the top and go down to open level blueprint. And we're going to click on it, and it's going to open up the blueprint here. And then on event begin play in here, we're going to create our main menu widget. So we're going to search for create widget. We're going to click on it, and it's going to say construct none at first, but this is create widget. And then from the drop down in class, we're going to go down to WP main menu, compile and save. And then I'm going to add it to the viewport so we can actually see it here. So when opening level, open main menu widget. So that's what this is doing right here. All right, and then if we click this level main menu, go back here and we click the play button, it should open our main menu so we can test it. You can see my hovering working good here. If I click quit, it should leave, which it does. And if I click play, it should bring me to my level here, which it also does. And I should be able to move around here just fine. Like that shouldn't change or affect anything. So make sure that all of that is working for your main menu widget. If it's not, go back through and like figure it out. And then the next video we'll get into the pause menu and continue on from there.